So welcome, everyone. Thank you to my panelists for being here today. I'm going to just quick put my little title card up there. I forgot to do that when I started, so that you can all see that. We are featuring law libraries today. I'm so excited. And this is our last of these Real Life Librarianship series for just a little while. Anne and I wanted to take a short break so that we can evaluate the series and make sure that we're going in the right direction and that we're offering what people want to see. So be watchful of your email. I'll be sending out a survey to see what more you're looking for. And as always, the link to the evaluation is on that title card, but I will be sending that out to all of our attendees tomorrow. So thank you again for being here. I'm very excited to have you. And let's get started. So we will begin with our first question, which is to introduce yourself. Tell us, what is your current job title? Where do you work? And how does your library fit into the larger organization or into the Minnesota library system, whatever works for you there? And then give a quick description of your library and where it fits in the library landscape, okay? Let us start with Theresa.
Ooh, I get to go first. So I'm Theresa Myers. I am currently a research analyst at Fish & Richardson, which is an intellectual property law firm. They only practice one area of law, and they are located all over the country, all over the world, but the library is only in Minneapolis. So a lot of my clientele, I work with digitally. So I don't get to meet a ton of them anymore, but that's okay. Let's see. In our organization, so the reason I'm in Minneapolis and our offices are literally all over the world is because a couple of years, almost 6-7 years ago, Fish & Richardson moved all their administrative branches and departments. They moved them all to Minneapolis just for real estate reasons and all that sort of thing. And so we have this huge hub in downtown Minneapolis and it's all open space. They have a very open office concept. So when COVID hit, it was just like, yay, I share a room with 300 other people. There are no walls. So yeah, we haven't been back to the office for a year. But basically all the administrative departments are housed in Minneapolis. The library is directly under the IT branch of everything. So like my boss's boss is the CIO. And so, yeah, there's some places where the library is under marketing and things like that, but we're under technology. We handle a lot of that sort of thing. Let's see, what else do we want to know? Oh, so I work for a private law firm. So our library is private to the attorneys within our firm and the staff that our firm uses. We do occasionally have relationships with other libraries if we need references outside of our library, which is often enough for patent research and things like that. Otherwise, we're for confidentiality reasons, for more than anything, we kind of are in-house and in-house only. Did I miss anything?
No, you did great.
Okay.
Do you have a physical library?
A very small one.
Okay. I'm thinking, like, I'm envisioning a big giant room and I'm like, where are the books?
We have a small closet. It's mostly all dictionaries, because one of the things that patent litigation revolves around is the definition of a word at a particular period of time in history. And so we have a collection of all sorts of historical and technical dictionaries. So yeah,
wow.
But that's the only thing that we have physical copies of anymore is the dictionaries. So
Perfect. Thank you so much. Molly.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. It's nice to see you. So I am Molly Hagen. I'm the manager of research services at Robbins Kaplan LLP. I am pretty similar to Theresa in the structure, but I'll give you a little background. Let me just pull that question up. So Robbins is also a private law firm. We have a team of 4, normally 5, but with the world of COVID, things we're kind of dealing with some current realities right now. How we fit into the larger organization is my structure is interesting. It's changed in the few years, in the 6.5 years that I've been there. So as of about a year ago, we moved into kind of like a business intelligence structure is what I would call it. So I used to report into the COO, and now I roll up into our Chief Business Intelligence Officer, which is really interesting. And she has a couple of other sort of specialized services, is how I would describe us. People with advanced degrees. We have a lot of technical work. We also have a lot of patent work. So we have people with PhDs that work at the firm in science and also in like economics. And I think just those 2 things. So we kind of all go together since my team, most of us have the MLIS. So our patrons are also private. It's the employees, all firm members that work there, not just attorneys. And we work pretty heavily with most of the groups, but I would say with a special emphasis on marketing and business development. So again, how that fits into the library landscape is we are headquartered here in Minnesota, but private. We have some other offices that are also in North America, but on the east and west coast. But our biggest hub is here. We do have a physical library. It is also quite small. Like Theresa, my firm also does patent work. We do some other things too, but we do a lot of patent work. So also have a lot of dictionaries and, some other print. Things have really changed, in the last year of working from home. So I've scaled back a lot of print, and we did a big change about 5 years ago, just with some restructuring. And I imagine that will continue. Again, similar to Theresa, a big part of my job as the manager is to move as much digital as we can, but also understand that sometimes we can't get everything digital, and sometimes that's more of a cost. And so, just managing all of those things. I think I answered the question, Olivia.
Yeah.
Did I hit it? Okay.
Let me ask you this. You and Theresa both said that you are private law firms. Is there such thing as a public law firm?
No, good point. No, just we're a private, right? We don't have a ticker symbol, but yes, we're a private company, I should say.
I just didn't know. I don't know a lot about law firms. I mean, I guess I assumed they were all private, but I thought maybe not.
Yeah, it comes from library language and stuff like that, where you have private libraries versus public libraries. And so it's just like, well, we're a private library because we have private clientele.
Got it.
You can't come in off the street to look at our dictionaries.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. Thank you both.
Why?
Why would you want to?
Oh, I would want to. I think looking library sounds super exciting, but library geeks. So
sure.
Let's hear from Karen.
Well, in contrast, we're a public law library. Yeah. So I'm the director of the Hennepin County Law Library. The county law libraries in Minnesota are funded primarily by filing fee income. So every time you file a court case, there's a fee tacked onto that case, and that fee amount varies from county to county. For the law library fee on civil filings runs from maybe $10 to $18, depending on the county. And then criminal filing fees run from like $5 to $15 per case. And so most counties in Minnesota have a county law library, but not many of them are staffed. So in the metro area, quite a number of those law libraries have 1 or 2 employees. The Hennepin County Law Library has 5 employees. I supervise 4 other folks here. And then the State Law Library in St. Paul has a larger staff, and they're kind of a backstop for all those county law libraries that don't have any staff in them. So our mission is to help the court and the public in navigating the courts and doing legal research. And so any librarians out there who want to find out about legal research should feel comfortable referring themselves and others to a local county law library. Both Ramsey County and Hennepin County have practitioner-oriented collections. We're really trying to help people who are going into court do that well. The state law library focuses on appellate work. So if people are going to appeal up into the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court, they have a lot of material on that. And law school law libraries, academic law libraries, tend to have more theoretical, like the underpinnings of law. So we all have lots of law books, but ours are more practitioner oriented. I think law firm libraries are more practitioner oriented as well. Would you say so, Molly and Theresa? Yeah. So let's see. Where are we located? We're on the 24th floor of the Hennepin County Government Center. Typically, right now, at present, we're in exile. We were moved out of the government center, not our whole library, of course, because as with the firm libraries, a lot of our material is online now. But we're in a building a couple blocks away from the government center until the Chauvin trial is completed.
Ah, for safety, I'm assuming.
For safety's sake.
Yeah, yeah. All the county departments moved out.
So we did have Liz Ruppy, the state law librarian, at one of our sessions. So we did learn about that. But so I use the Dakota County Library. Galaxy has a law library and a law librarian. How does that fit into the big scheme of things?
That's a unique situation in Dakota County. Their main law library is in the courthouse in Hastings. But they recognized, quite a few years ago that there was more activity at the Galaxy location where they had a satellite court. And so they put a little outpost of the law library there at the Galaxy branch. Hennepin has multiple courts. We have a Brookdale and a Ridgedale. We used to have a Southdale court, but we didn't put satellite law libraries in those locations.
They seem busy.
Yeah, they're busy in Dakota.
Karen, do you have to be a resident of Hennepin County to use the Hennepin County Law Library?
You do not. And as time goes on, you less and less have to be, because how do we know? People email us from all over the country. And, it's more work to try to figure out where someone is coming from than it is just to provide service. So those boundaries are much more blurred than they used to be.
Great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Hey, now that we know a little bit about your jobs, let's find out a little bit about each of you. So the next question is to tell us about you. Where did you go to school? And give us a brief overview of the path that led you to where you are today. And I'm just going to go in reverse order. So this time I'll start with Karen.
Well, thank you. I have a checkered past. I went to the University of Illinois and got a Master's of Science in Library and Information Science. And my first professional job was at the Public Library of Brookline in Brookline, Massachusetts for a couple of years. Then I was a substitute librarian for Minneapolis Public Library branches and an evening supervisor at the Bush Memorial Library at Hamlin. And while I was there late one night, I saw an MLA newsletter back when it was only in print. And they were advertising for a circuit riding prison law librarian at the state law library. So I applied the next day, which was the last day to apply. I walked my application in and I did that for a while. Then I was a law firm librarian for a couple of years. Then I went back to the state law library as head of outreach and public services there. Then I went to Hamlin University to get my law degree and worked part-time in the library there. Then I was in law practice for a couple of years at Lindquist and Benham, which is now Ballard Spahr. And then I went to Mitchell Hamlin and I was head of reference and then assistant director there. And now I've been the director at Hennepin County Law Library for about 5 years. So I always tell people I'm not on a fast track, but I'm on a track.
And I would just like to say my first paid library job out of library school was at the Bush Memorial Library as an evening supervisor.
It's such a great launch. The former director at Bush Library was my co-evening supervisor there. It was a great launching pad for cool things. Yep.
Enjoyed my time there.
Yep, it was great.
Thank you so much. Molly, tell us about you.
Unmute myself. Yeah, sure. So let's see. I graduated college with a political science degree from a small liberal arts college, which I will advocate for liberal arts forever, but it didn't really give me a lot of job preparation. So I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do for a couple of years when I was in my early 20s and mid 20s. So I worked at law firms, not as a librarian. I thought maybe I would go to law school, as many political science majors do. Took the LSAT, did okay. I actually applied to a couple schools and decided not to go. Paid a deposit fee, and then I was just like, I don't want to do this. I just was nervous about the time commitment, the financial commitment, because I didn't really feel a passion about it. And frankly, I had talked to a bunch of lawyers, kind of informational interviews, and they said, you should really be sure. This was in the early 2000s. Just you're going to really, it's a big commitment. So I decided not to go, and I finally went to a career counselor when I was about 27 at I think my dad's behest. I think he was sick of hearing me kind of, moaning about what am I going to do. And so I went to this counselor, and, he interviewed me for a couple hours. He was a psychologist, and gave me a top 10 list of careers. And guess what was number one? A librarian. And honestly, I'll admit, at that time, this was, 2006, I think. I didn't know that you could go to grad school to be a librarian. I just had no idea. So I investigated it, as a good researcher would do. And I thought, yeah, this is for me. It sounds amazing. So applied, enrolled. I started at St. Kate's. I was part of the group that was set to graduate in 2009. And that was when they had separated from Dominican to get their own accreditation. And that fell through for a little bit in there. So I got redeemed, but there was a little unknown period. So I actually wound up finishing from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And I did that online for my last year. So graduated in 2010, kind of coming out of the recession. I had pieced together some other work in the years, when I was in school, but really was kind of going to classes. So I wound up getting a job at Thomson Reuters in 2011. They had a library, they called it a learning center, but that was all in the process of restructuring because Thomson West, I think, merged with Reuters. Yeah, is that right? Honestly, I can't remember. Somebody else will know. But
yes,
anyways.
Just go with it. Yes.
Yeah, it was one of those. West was the old, right? We still say West Publishing, right? So that was the Minnesota brand and then Thomson came in, and the Thomson family of Canada. So anyway, I wound up winding up in like an HR role there, and they called it talent and development. And I did that for a few years, and I liked it, but it wasn't, I felt like, well, this isn't what I just paid all this money to go to graduate school for. So it's just, I like it, but I want to put my degree to use. So I had made a connection with the former library director at Robbins, and she reached out to me in 2014. Hey, we're going to have an opportunity here. I applied. I got hired. I was a research analyst for a few years. My old boss, who was a wonderful mentor to me, she wound up moving out to Manhattan, taking a job somewhere else, and I was promoted, and here I am. So I learned, I did a lot of research before the firms too, just in other roles, kind of piecemeal in the 2000s. Nothing super long term. I don't even know. I kind of bopped around a little bit. But so always was interested in the research role, but then I did want to try my hand at management. And so that's where I am now.
Great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Theresa, tell us about you.
Okay. I also have a liberal arts background, and I got a philosophy degree. So try finding a job with that. No, No, I actually, I remember going through high school trying to kind of figure out like what career direction I wanted to go. And I took all the different assessments. I even had one that listed librarian as #1. And I was just like, no, that can't be right. And so that was just a weird thing that I've actually discovered that assessment result. And I was just like, somebody told me when I was 17 that I should be a librarian. Who knew that this would be like my perfect career? Anyway, so I went to Wheaton College, which is just outside of Chicago, got my philosophy degree, pretty much went straight into law school, even though every attorney everywhere will always tell anybody thinking about going into law school, don't. You really, really need to know what you would like to do, because it is a lot of debt and it is a lot of time commitment and it is a lot of stress. And so like, know what you want to do with your law degree before you go there, because it's a huge investment. That being said, I ignored all of them and I went to law school. The Great Recession hit during my second year. And so there, like, as I was getting closer to graduation, there was attorneys with 10+ years experience being laid off while I was going to be starting my job search as an attorney. So that was not as fun as that sounds. So for law school, I went to a place called Regent University out on the East Coast, because they were gonna give me money to go to Europe and study international law for a while, which was my favorite thing at the time. And then I learned it wasn't as much of my favorite thing anymore. But towards the end of my law school career, I really enjoyed intellectual property, which is patents, where I work now. Patents, trademarks, and copyright. Copyright especially was my favorite, just because I'm a geek and I can choose things like that to be really pumped about. So I really liked intellectual property. Again, the economy was down. There wasn't really jobs in that area because most attorneys were just doing bread and butter stuff like divorces, bankruptcies, traffic ticket representation, stuff like that, to pay bills and stuff like that. So Virginia wasn't working out for me. There's still 7 law schools there for the entire state, as opposed to just the 2 that are in Minnesota right now. And plus most of the DC law schools, I think there's 3 or 4 of them. Most of them take the Virginia bar as well. There's a lot of Virginia attorneys. The job market was not in my favor. So I moved back to Minnesota because this is where I'm from, actually. I grew up in Dakota County. I grew up in Apple Valley. And so because I was living at home at the time, and I was representing a friend of mine, just because she needed a little bit of advice, and I could handle all the scary books in the law library. And it was actually sitting in the Galaxy branch of the Dakota County Law Library that I met a law librarian, and she was curious about what I was doing. And I was telling her how I really enjoyed the research and the computer stuff and the book stuff. And, I was working for myself because I couldn't get a job in a firm and things in a firm as an attorney. And she actually went on the Minnesota Association of Law Library website, which is the local professional association for law librarians. And she just started printing out jobs, job descriptions, and every single one, like as I was researching, she'd come over and she's just like, oh, while you're looking at that, here's this. And I think I walked home with like at least a dozen different job descriptions, all of which I loved, and I wanted to do every single one of them. And I knew right then, like, I needed to go get a library degree so that I could apply for these jobs and have people believe that I actually wanted to be a librarian and not an attorney. Because I get asked that every single interview. I still get asked that, like, oh, don't you want to be an attorney? No, I don't. Anyway, so I applied to St. Kate's, and I did the St. Kate's nights and weekends for the 2.5, 3 years. It was a whirlwind while I was there, because I was still working 40 hours a week when I had work. And then I took, let's see, gosh, the last couple of semesters, let's see, I had an internship. I was working at the Washington County Law Library 1 day a week because I knew I was introduced to the manager or director there. I forget what Pauline's actual title was, but Paulina Fuso, she was over at Washington County, and she loved having interns there to just show them what public law librarianship was. And she loved having me around. She was super fun. And then from there, I had to quit that internship because I got another internship working at the Supreme Court of the United States for a summer. So I went out to DC for a couple of months, and I worked in their, let's see, it was actually their technology department. They have a very large library. It was 26 librarians at the time, and they had 3 different departments within the library. And so I was working with the technology side of things, but I got to do a lot of research as part of the project that I was working on, including actually going and doing research at the National Archives, as well as the Library of Congress. So that was super fun. Then I came back, I graduated, and then I started looking around for employment. I started off at a small law firm called Maslin that is also local to Minneapolis. And so I was working there for nearly 3 years, I guess. And then I was working at Gray Plant Moody, which now has a different name, and I forget what it is now. And now I'm working at Fish and Richardson. So that's everything, right?
That's fantastic. I love hearing people's stories. It's so interesting to see how the path that people took to get to where they are, which brings us to our next question. When you started out in library school, what library path did you set out to follow? Did you want to be an academic, public? Did you all know you were going to be law librarians? And what made you choose that path, if you didn't already touch on that? And then how did that choice affect the story that you just told? How did it affect getting to where you are today? And I'm going to go back to Karen for this one.
Well, I never wanted to be a law librarian. When I was in library school, I worked in the business library, also a type of library I was not interested in, but it was my student job. So I was working there with a woman who had worked in a law firm library and was getting her library degree. And I remember to this day thinking, oh, that sounds terrible. Who would ever want to do that? I was all public library all the time. I just thought that was the bee's knees. And as a matter of fact, I was probably 6 years in at the state law library and telling my boss, you know, I still think of myself as a public librarian who's just doing this law library thing until I can get a public library job. So I'm a reluctant law librarian, but I have to say, one thing is I was never tempted to read the books, where that was a big challenge for me in a public library. I'd always want to grab a book and go hide out in the stacks and actually read it. And my to be read books were just legion. But it turns out, of course, that law librarianship is super interesting. And how I ended up there, I think, was having an open mind. You know, if you're new in the profession and have a chance for a position and you're not sure if you're going to like it, I wouldn't rule it out until you really investigate it, because it's opened a lot of doors for me. You know, I worked a couple of years as a law firm librarian. It really wasn't my deal, but I learned a lot doing it. And so I was a better supervisor when I went back to the state law library. And I was not a very happy corporate attorney, but boy, did I learn a lot doing that work, and it positioned me really well for my job at William Mitchell. So I would say, don't rule something out. And then, sorry, apparently it's vacuuming day in this building. Crazy. So anyhow, yeah, I would say be open to trying different things, because I feel like I don't think I would have moved up as much if I hadn't moved out. So I've moved out and up different places, and it's been good. Also, health insurance drove a lot of my career decisions. So,
Good to know. Thank you so much. And I will tell you, I once got reprimanded when I was interning in a public library for being the slowest shelver on the planet because I couldn't
yes,
shelve them. I had to stop and like look them over and yeah. So
make a little note, yeah, to be read. I
and
know,
then
I
like
get
you
it.
need to focus. These need to be put back on the shelves. Stop reading them all. So I feel you there. All right, Molly.
Yeah. Yeah, I just have to say too, I get such I get all my library books on hold at, at the same time, right? From Hennepin County. And then I just get so excited to read them, right? But I think a lot about how I don't have enough time and I just want to be able to sit and read my books. But someday we'll be able to.
Hopefully.
So yeah. Yeah, so for me, I thought, Karen, that was so interesting. I didn't know that. I'm really enjoying this. I didn't know that background. For me, yeah, by the time I think when I got to library school, so I was in my late 20s, and I think because I had felt really adrift kind of from 22 graduating college until then, I think I maybe felt a little more targeted just because I was just so ready. Like I was so excited that I had figured out, I always knew I wanted to go to grad school, but just not really what for. And just exactly, Theresa, we are very similar. I mean, I just totally agree. The lawyers really kind of scared me. Oh, they were like, no, you really, because it's so much money, it's so expensive. So I think by the time I got to school, yeah, I think I knew what I didn't want to do. And for me, that was, it's going to sound really bad, but working with children, I didn't want to do. Love kids, but I just didn't want to do it. And so one thing I really helped me and I would recommend to everybody is, I think I mentioned it when I was talking before, but really the power of doing informational interviews, which is frankly kind of what we're doing right now. But I just did a number of those. I just cold called people back. My dog is going to town. I cold called people, I identified, I thought about like advertising agencies. So I was trying to think of all the special libraries, right? Law firms. I talked to people at like, I remember General Mills, so some private, again, this was like 2007. So I'm sure the landscape has changed a little bit as far as what's available. But I was just trying to think of any place, because the Twin Cities has so many large companies where they would need a researcher. And, we don't even necessarily need to call it a librarian, but the skills that we learn can really be brought to bear in so many different aspects. And I think, we all share this creativity and curiosity that really, I think, is broadly applicable. And anyway, so I always knew I wanted to go, maybe not necessarily a law firm, but the special library route. So then graduating in 2010, it was supposed to be 2009 for me, wound up with that little snafu being 2010. So like Theresa, market not great. I was just like, well, what can I do? What can I do? And so kind of just wound up at law firms again. Frankly, I didn't really love my experience before, just being kind of like a paralegal before I knew what I wanted to do. So I was a little wary about it. But as a librarian, I think because I found the profession that I love, I've been really happy with my team. Our team, there's 4 of us and we're so collaborative. And I'm sure Theresa and Karen, I know you feel the same way. I mean, we work together as such a unit. And I think that's really special. We do get pretty complicated things. One thing I've definitely noticed in my 6 years just at this firm is the questions we get are getting harder and harder because I think the attorneys are just more and more comfortable with doing Westlaw or Lexis or whatever themselves. And so they're pretty savvy. And so then they give us the harder stuff, right? Or the more time consuming, not even necessarily harder, but just that'll take them longer and they don't have time to do it. And that's why we're here. We're here to save them time. So yeah, anyway, all that to say, I think I started out more of knowing what I didn't want to do and then being open to a bunch of different more corporate experiences. And that's how I still feel. Kind of, I'm always curious what's out there, what's happening. I love talking and hearing to people what they're doing. I like to kind of keep my pulse, as I'm sure a lot of us do, because we're curious, we're curious. I like to kind of just see what's out there and hear how people, where they're going and what paths companies are taking. I think it's really interesting. Librarians are so resilient. We've pivoted so many times, and it's cool to see like the different titles and things that people have now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I agree that knowing what you don't want to do is a huge piece of figuring out what
Yeah.
you do want to do.
It helped. Yeah, it helped a
It
lot.
does.
And now, kind of like Karen was saying, now, 10 years out of school for me, out of grad school, like maybe I would be more open to a public, who knows? I kind of like to, like I said, just kind of keep looking, see what sounds cool, because I think organizations, wherever they are, they know the value of what we can bring, and the money that we can save them, and the information that we can dig up. I mean, not everybody can do what we do.
Exactly. Thank you. Theresa.
So in high school, I didn't know I wanted to be a librarian. In law school, I didn't, I knew law librarians. I actually worked in my law library while I was a law student, but just as kind of a student worker, so I could do all my reading and homework while I was watching everybody else read and do homework. So I knew that there was such a thing as law librarians, but I didn't think about that as a profession until I met a law librarian who was just like, this is actually a job that you want. And I was just like, I actually do. So I knew going into library school that that's exactly what I wanted to do. And I had law school loans that dictated that it probably was going to be a private law library, just because, yeah, that it's a lot of debt that I had. So I kind of knew pretty specifically what I wanted to do. I did take the opportunity while I was in library school to try everything, though. That was one thing that I regretted about law school, or as I was evaluating why law school wasn't as great of an experience, even for somebody who loved school. Law school made me hate school for quite a number of years. And it wasn't school so much, it was just, there was just a lot of different elements that were there. When I got back into school and went to library school, everything was great because you have people who want to collaborate, want everybody to succeed, want to work together. Law school does not foster quite that same environment. So, sorry, Molly, I'm making you laugh. So basically, one of the things that I learned from having previous years of graduate school was how to handle graduate school. And that was to take hold of the experience, get as much experience as possible, and kind of fit it into your story. So I started knowing that I wanted to be a law librarian, pretty clear about what kind of law librarian I wanted. And if I really could choose what I wanted to do, I would be working in an IP law firm. Go figure. This is kind of my dream job. So basically, I had that aim, but I tried all sorts of different things. This is why I had an internship at a public law library, just to see what that was like, see what kinds of questions there were, see how the clientele was different. Why, the questions are obviously going to be different. Attorneys are going to ask like the nitty gritty. There's only 2 sentences ever written on this kind of questions. Whereas other patrons are going to be asking these general questions that there's at least 5 whole books that they could be really reading to get their answers. So there's just a difference in clientele, a difference in the way that you handle things. I got to try that, but I also got to try things that were not even law library related, because in St. Kate's had a capstone program for a while there. So I actually got to go work at an archive for a semester, which was really, really fun, just to learn to appreciate that area. And then I got to work with a lot of different technology and learn about a lot of that, which is also part of my background, which has really helped me move forward with all of the changes that are happening to law librarianship in general, which is most of it is online. I work with data at least 50% of my day, like data analytics or data compilation, and understanding, having at least a basic understanding of statistics or having an understanding of how to compare a lot of different data has been very, very, very helpful in working with the clientele that I'm working with and meeting all these tight deadlines and everything like that. So I took experience from everywhere and just made sure to apply it because I kind of knew what I wanted to do. So that kind of informed my path in library school. But I was willing to try a lot of different stuff, and I still have branched out a little bit. I mean, I've applied at like Land O'Lakes. I put in an application there. Apparently there is such a thing as nutrition librarians, which totally trumps all of my law background. So there's so many different opportunities out there. And so if you just take a look at what's going on, get in touch with those people, but take advantage of every sort of experience that you have, because you never know when you're going to be using it. Any kind of experience will be able to help you.
That is great advice. Take advantage of every opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think
Okay.
if there's one thing we've learned through this series of real life librarianship is just how varied library jobs are. And that, you know, a lot of people think, oh, I want to be a librarian, and it's almost always public, maybe academic. But especially when we start digging into the special libraries and the branches that go off that tree of special librarianship, it couldn't be more different, you know, from Land O'Lakes to whatever. So it's been fascinating from that. And I do think the advice of take every opportunity is certainly one of the best things you can take away from this. I also will say that we are in a tornado warning. So I had to move to the basement, and I left my husband to wrangle the cats down here. So we'll see. Very weird that, you know, you never know what's going to happen when you're on Zoom.
You really don't know what's going to happen. Well, stay safe over there, Anne. Okay. So let's talk about basics, minimum qualifications and starting salary for a job, an entry-level job in one of your firms or your library. And let's go with Molly.
Yeah, okay. So let's see. Well, so on our team, I mentioned earlier, we're down a person right now, but that's temporary. So we have the manager role, myself, not entry level, and then we have 3 researchers. We're called they have long titles. They are called Research and Business Development Intelligence Analysts. And then the position I'm hoping to replace when I get approved on that would be our technical services specialist or librarian. We were kind of open to that not requiring a master's degree. And you know, I think Theresa, again, I might steal your thunder a little just because our places are so similar, but we don't. So something that's different about law firms is we don't really. Well, we don't have requirements. So, you know, I know that at an academic, right, you know, like the University of Minnesota, you're going to
Just because we don't have requirements doesn't mean we don't have standards, though.
That is right. That is right. But for example, lawyers love to hire other lawyers. Theresa, am I right? Back me up here. So, you know, if you've got that JD, the attorneys just this is my 3rd firm I've worked at, and they like that. So, for example, my previous boss, the one who moved to New York, she had a JD, but she did not have an MLIS. And on this panel, I do not have a JD, and the other 2 ladies do. So that's not a requirement. I think for the job descriptions as I hired them, I did make a bachelor's degree required, but you know what, even there, I would be open to seeing other candidates. I think it's about experience, and yeah, just kind of, you know the right person when you interview them. I don't know how specific I should say about salary ranges, Olivia, just because we kind of,
Can you give me a ballpark?
I can give you a ballpark. Yeah. So because just the last way we had the technical services, I had it written as a specialist and not a librarian. So that was lower. I can ballpark you that was between like 40 and 50.
Okay.
And then for our research jobs, those are, a higher level. And I could ballpark that would be, and starting, I would say more like between, I would say 60-ish
Okay.
would be fair to say. And then a little bit higher for me. I'm not going to say for me.
That's okay. Not required. It's just, I
Okay.
know that there are a lot of library students who either attend these or watch these online, because we do have a YouTube channel for these.
Okay.
And I think it's helpful for them when they're in library school to figure out, to just have some idea of what they're getting into.
Yeah, there's a
Ballpark is
range.
fine.
Ballpark is fine. I mean, it always depends on who we're making an offer to. I can say that our HR looks at a lot of different sources. So there's certain surveys that we get from the Association of Legal Administrators. Of course, AALL does a survey of law librarians that I think is really useful. The thing I can say, what I've learned as a manager, is they really want to look at national salary information isn't as useful. If anybody's just curious to poke around, that they're really going to want to look at Minnesota, right? Or if we were hiring in our LA office, right? Because obviously, if we have an office in LA, like they're going to pay more than Minneapolis, because everything costs more. Same with New York, because we have an office in Manhattan, or certainly San Francisco. So if anyone's curious, I know that the people could probably poke around and find some stuff. Glassdoor would be a good source too.
That's great. Thank you so much. Theresa, let's hear from you.
Okay. So very similar to Molly's situation. I would kind of put, well, let's see. I started as a technical services and a researcher. So like my starting salary was different because I was a hybrid. I was serving two purposes and stuff like that. But yeah, researchers, depending on what qualifications you're bringing in or how many years of experience, it is going to change what you get offered. Also, wherever the job is located, because how much I get offered here in Minneapolis is different than how much I would get offered if I was taking a job in Chicago or in DC, or it just, cost of living differences make all the difference. But yeah, I would say Molly's estimations are near
correct. Chris just chatted the gold standard here. If anyone's curious, we got the
AALL salary survey. They release it every 2 years. It's kind of one of those things where we all take a look and see where we stand, and I do. But they break it down by region and by qualifications and all sorts of other wonderful things, by firm, by position, all sorts of stuff. It's a wonderful resource. It's made by a library association, so it's probably the most specific versus a Glassdoor type search or something like that. As far as minimal qualifications, it's true. I would say that law firms don't have a here's the lowest required thing, but they do like the shiny things. So if you have something that helps you float to the top, they're going to look at you a little bit more closely. So for instance, my team, there's 4 of us researchers. So I have 3 coworkers that are just researchers. And I have my library master's and my JD. 2 of my coworkers have just their JD. And then one of my coworkers has just his master's. And like 10 years of experience, but we come together and we make a really actually well-balanced team where like one person is very, very good at the patent research, somebody else is very, very good at the legal research. Our our research dad. He's very good at all of the administrative, the library focused stuff, and like anything that's outside of the legal field. Like he's an expert on finding it, and I kind of wear both the hats, where it's just like I can speak library language to the attorney stuff and legal jargon into the library stuff, and so I help translate. So we all have our strengths, and I give points to my boss, Jill Strand, who put us all together. So she tells us every day how much she loves us. And then she demands a lot from us. So that is one thing I will say about a law firm, that they will be looking for somebody who can handle high stress situations. It doesn't, like, yes, the attorneys are the ones that are dealing with the clients, but oh, they pass those deadlines on right straight to us. And as Molly said earlier, the questions are getting a little bit harder. It doesn't mean that if you know zero law that you're not going to be any use in a law library. It just means that it's something that you're going to have to learn as you go along. And I would say at where I'm at currently, I would say maybe only 25% of my actual research is on legal topics. And that's because none of my other coworkers like legislative histories. That's my thing. Like those get sent to me because nobody else wants to do them. But if I'm doing legal research, I mean, like one of my coworkers, she's a former Thomson Reuters reference attorney. So she loves doing that research, and she can do it in 5 minutes. So it just depends. If you're willing to learn, and you're willing to learn in kind of the fast-paced scenario, I would say that is one of those soft qualifications that if you could talk up, especially at a law firm, that is important. And then other soft skills like customer service is also important, because you are dealing with people who are very intelligent, who are very, very stressed, and may not know that they're very stressed and being very stressed at you. And so maintaining composure and maintaining patience while you're dealing with somebody who feels like they've already explained this and they don't want to explain it to you is very, very important. Not every attorney is like that. There are a lot of good eggs in a lot of the law firms and stuff like that, but all it takes is just like that one guy, and you're just like, oh my gosh, this is scary. We say a lot of weird things about attorneys because we're working with them all day long, but there's a lot of good eggs, and I would say a lot of them are coming to understand how important libraries are, especially in firms that have a good library presence. And so they know that we know our stuff, and they generally treat us nicely, if not on par with how they're treating everybody else that day, depending on how stressed they are. So, there you go.
Great. Thank you so much. Karen.
Yeah, so for a directorship, I needed some years of supervisory experience and an MLS, and then a JD or other grad degree was preferred. I think that's how it was when I started. But the county, the public library system and the county generally is trying to move away from credentialing as a means of determining whether someone is the best fit for a position. So I would anticipate the law library might move away from that in the future as well. It throws up some artificial barriers. It makes it hard to diversify your workforce. And it's difficult to tie it directly to your ability to do the job. However, I would say, law librarianship it does require specialized knowledge. So a background in legal education or some kind of law experience or law firm experience helps a person trying to get into law librarianship, and that continues to be emphasized. I did look at the salary survey. I was looking for my position. Maybe I didn't read the description closely enough, but it is a good source. So the government law library director average salary nationwide from the 2019 salary survey was $99,000. Minnesota is considered to be in the West Central region. And so in the West Central region, the mean salary is $90,000. But in the West Central region, if the director has both a JD and an MLS, then the mean salary is $108,000. So that's just kind of a way of showing what Theresa was describing, that you can slice and dice those positions up a number of different ways in that salary survey, and it's really helpful. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. That was so helpful. I mean, for me, I'm not looking for a job in the libraries, but I really learned a lot listening to all of you. I'm going to jump around a little bit on the questions if you guys are following along, just so you know. We're going to jump to, what is a typical day like for you? And I know you guys have touched on this a little bit, but I want to hear, and I know there's really no such thing as a typical day for anyone, anywhere. But just give me the details of what does it actually mean to do your job? And this time, Karen, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, and so of course this question, I'm sure, is different now than it would have been a year ago or
Yes.
2 years ago. But in some ways it's the same. So in a public law library, like the Hennepin County Law Library, in the course of a day, we'll get questions from Molly Hagen, who's going to send in a request for some source that her attorney needs and they don't have in the law firm. And maybe I'll hear from someone at Fish and Richardson to, provide a copy of some obscure something or other that somehow we have access to, but they don't. Then you'll have someone who calls on the phone, who just wants to know, like, how do you modify child custody in Minnesota? Where would you find court forms to do that? Do you have to have a lawyer to do that, or can you do it on your own? Back when we were open, then someone might come in because they've just been to the probate counter, and the court people there sent them up to the law library to try to figure out what kind of forms they need, because someone has died and they don't know what to do about the estate. And those are pretty classic. And then, like in public libraries everywhere, then you'll get someone who calls because they have a point of view about how the law should be, and do we agree that whatever, after their traumatic brain injury, that something happened and it shouldn't have happened, and it was only 1978, and and so we do a lot of teaching, I would say, and a lot of coaching on how, I mean, a classic question for us, and for those of you who aren't law librarians, this is not the way that we do legal research. And that is to say, I want to find a list of cases where the defendant had a gun and the police stopped him for speeding and they found the gun, and he won. And we just don't, there's no way to research law by who won and who lost with a given fact scenario. And of course, I think it's really a human way to approach a problem. And it seems like that's what you would do. So we spend a lot of time explaining to folks how legal research works. It kind of doesn't matter who won or lost in the case. You figure out what principle the case was based on, and then you argue that your situation is most similar to the side that won. That's what lawyers get paid the big bucks to do, is to figure out how to make your side sound like the winning side. So we spend some time with that. We offer continuing legal education classes, so lawyers have to take classes to keep their licenses active. So once a month we offer a CLE course, and a lot of county law libraries do that. It's a service to the bar because usually you have to pay quite a bit for these classes, and we offer them for free. And it's good for us too. It kind of keeps our name out there. Even people who might not use our collection will use that service that we offer. In the role of director, of course, I spend a fair amount of time, looking at the budget, making kind of piece by piece decisions about which titles we're going to retain, what format we'll have them in, how we can best serve our patrons. So I don't want to go into too much detail, but I think it's just good to point out that the law really touches all aspects of our lives. And so we hear in the law library about all aspects of people's lives. You know, if it's family law or their business or their property or their guns or their pets, there's a legal angle to all of it, and it's super interesting. I've been in this for a long time. I'm the oldest librarian here, and new questions are coming up all the time. You've never heard it all.
Well, I don't think you could go into too much detail because I found that fascinating, and both Molly and Theresa were laughing along, I think commiserating while you were talking. So I think we all enjoyed that.
I was thinking to myself, I've had that phone call. There was a regular in the Washington County Law Library, and she would always come in and she's just like, I'm ready to sue all the way to the Supreme Court. And that's how she would start her legal research, is how do you take her case to the Supreme Court? And sometimes you telling her that you can't take that case to the Supreme Court wasn't the answer she was looking for. And so you had to actually help her find materials on how she could make her case to the Supreme Court. So you just have to help. So
Excellent. Tell us more.
Okay.
Okay.
So at Fish and Richardson, oh goodness, I usually have the afternoon shift on the reference desk. So that just means that's when I'm the person who's responsible for answering the emails first. But I am pretty much answering reference requests all day long, because that is my job. I am a research librarian, or well, research analyst, excuse me. So basically the request could be, let's say, somebody from the, gosh, I can't think of all the different names. I guess it would be business development. They're looking for the address for somebody's general counsel so that we can send them a pitch letter. And then somebody over here is looking for statistics on how well our attorneys did in all these cases over the last 5 years. And so I get to answer questions about that so that they can tell clients about how awesome we are. And then I'll have attorneys come with, sorry, that's a thunderstorm out there. Then we'll have attorneys ask questions about, hey, I'm looking for cases by this judge that where he ruled in this way on this in this kind of a situation, which oddly for patent law, there's a lot of tools where you can look at who won and who lost, as opposed to most other legal research, just because there's a lot of different very specialized tools, because patent law is very it lends itself to that kind of granular data, metadata type of research. So I actually do get to look up cases based on who won. Yeah, but it's mostly doing data analytics on that, trying to decide how this judge is going to rule versus how they're not going to rule, helping attorneys do some research to help them choose the right jurisdiction. And then there's more technical stuff that is not law related at all, except that it's patent law related, which is doing like technical research. And so if somebody is looking at some new, pick a technology, Bitcoin, somebody is looking into Bitcoin and they want me to find some research about what Bitcoin is and what that looks like, find some articles that includes these keywords, and I'll go and find those. And that's purely librarian hat type of research. So that's just kind of, I mean, there's just a lot of different kinds of research. So that's just kind of a taste of the research aspect. So that's about, I would say about 85% of my time is that. And then there's also just, I'm part of a department. I'm part of a department in a business. And so we have department meetings. So sometimes my boss will have a meeting, check in, see how I'm doing. Or we'll have a meeting as a department just to make sure that we're all on the same page. Nobody's drowning underneath what it is they're doing. We do have projects that we work on outside of research, and it's generally to either evaluate new resources or to make our services better using technology in some way, or things like that. We clearly don't get all the time we need to work on those, but I think that's the story of every librarian everywhere, maybe. But like I said, about just because research is like exactly what I was hired for, that's like 85% of my time is spent doing that. So.
That's fascinating. Thank you. Molly, tell us about your day.
And I would love to, thank you. So I am the manager of the group, which means I do not get to do as much research as I maybe would like to. I knew that going in to this promotion, but I do miss it. I miss it. You know, so I can give you kind of a flavor of the things my department covers. I have it categorized into, if you kind of think of 5 buckets, and so my job is to really be aware of everything. But as far as doing the primary research like Theresa does, you know, I just don't, that's not my role anymore. One of the challenges of getting promoted when you at the same place is that like you kind of want to do the old stuff, but you can't because I'm not going to work 75 hours a week, you know. So it's been 3.5 years now, so I'm not new, and but I do miss it. But anyway, so the things that we support, so I really touch all of this. So it'd be the research. I would say we are a lot of legal research, but like Theresa and Karen were just saying, we really can run the gamut on requests. I mean, they're mostly going to be related to cases if they're coming from attorneys. But we also, so there's a lot of like legal research support that we do. Karen's group is amazing to help us with this sometimes if we're just like, I don't know how to do this search string, or, you know, frankly, I know Karen has a JD, maybe she can give me a little idea here, just kind of how we might formulate something. But then a lot of the other research support that we do is, I mentioned before, with like business development. That's been a little weird in the last year because of COVID, right? Because people aren't really going out to lunches and traveling. I guess some people probably are, but we're not really, like, the budget has been cut on doing these things for now. Oh, bye, Chris. Yeah, he said, who wouldn't want to be a law librarian? Yes, I agree. So a lot of business development stuff. So that could be one of the, just to give you a flavor, one of the kind of signature things we do, we call them backgrounder reports. I would bet Theresa does something similar at Fish. I've probably talked about it with Jill, but we will take a bunch of data from those specialized databases that we have. So the analytics, we can get litigation snapshots. We'll look at company backgrounds. It will even just Google like news headlines. And we'll boil it all down to a 1 or 2 page dossier for our people. So they don't have to process everything, and they can just really get that snapshot of a judge or a company, you know, potential client. It could be a court that they've never appeared in before, an opposing counsel. We have all these analytics tools that can kind of get at all this stuff. That's really honestly another driver of why I always wanted to work in a company, is because we buy all these cool tools and I think they're really interesting and I like working and playing around with them. So we also do, of course, you know, your interlibrary loans, your traditional, right, our tech services. So that's something that I touch a little bit. Big part of my day is spent with contracts, vendors, I have help within the firm on that, but, you know, making sure we're not missing a renewal deadline. I, again, do have support, thank God, on that, or I would lose my mind. But another big part that I think ties into that for me as the manager is really knowing what the latest innovations are, being really abreast of everything. So in case my boss or the chairman asks a question, you know, I don't want to be caught off surprised, or I really would never want someone in a leadership position to have heard of a legal research technology that I haven't heard of. Now, would we survive if I had to admit I didn't know? Like, that would be okay, but I just, you know, I want to know. So really kind of a flavor of everything. I have been going into the office once a week. We're mostly working from home. My team has not gone in, but I cataloged some books today and put some cards and pockets on because we're short staffed. And so I did a little bit of, you know, the tech stuff that I did as a job back in like 2006. So it's kind of one thing that's really served me well is that I've done kind of all the different library roles. So now as the manager, I really have that nice whole picture of, all the things that we do because I've done them. So every day is different. I think Theresa and Karen are the same. That's really what I like about this job. Not only are the questions different, and they really are, like I said before, they're getting harder. And I think that's interesting. But you never, I carry over more projects now just because of the role of managing the group. There's just more ongoing things I do, but I still get to see a lot of variety. And I think that keeps us curious, keeps us engaged. I just got a little
Excellent.
flash that your bandwidth is low, Olivia.
Okay.
But
Yeah, it's
you're still coming through.
it's been very spotty here today because of the weather, I think.
Yeah.
So
looking dark.
I'm practically sitting on top of my router trying to maximize as best I can. So
You're fine now.
good. And Molly, I'm going to stay with you because you kind of touched on this a little bit, but talk to us a little bit about the pandemic. How has this affected your job? And do you see it making permanent change for the future?
Yes, I do. But that's me with my crystal ball. I have no inside knowledge. But another thing I didn't mention that we do, and I'm sure the other groups do too, is current awareness. That's a big part of my department's service that we provide. So we will do newsletters for people if we want. We have tools to set that up. We can also do a Google alert. We track litigation if they're on a case and they just want to know when something's filed, or if they want to know whenever Cargill or Target gets sued. We can set up all that for them. So all that to say, I check the news every day for a newsletter I'm doing just about how firms are dealing with COVID. And I mean, there's new headlines every day, right? In our big, in like a American Lawyer is a popular magazine, right? Like things like that. So I do, based on what I'm reading there, and I've been monitoring that for about a year now, I do think there will be permanent change. TBD on what that specifically means for my firm. How do I say this politely? But lawyers are like small c conservative, right? Because I'm going to pigeonhole you guys, Theresa and Karen, but I think, my understanding is you're kind of trained to be cautious, right? And law is, you get your area of knowledge and you don't necessarily want that to change, right? It's like, I mean, it does gradually, but all that to say, I think with some technological advances that I've seen in the last year, and not even advances, but just for my group, it was really easy for us to pivot to working from home. And I think because they all had to, we jumped forward like 5 years, maybe even 10. So things that we are doing now, like my fiance works at Target Corp, and I mean, things that we talk about as like new things. He's like, yeah, we were doing that in 2006, right? Like instant messenger has been new to some people that I've talked to, right? We had that when I was in college in like 2001. I mean, it's not a new thing, right? So in that sense, not that I would call COVID good, but in the sense that we've moved ahead and shown that we can work and we're getting it done. And frankly, we're busier than ever in the library, I have to say. I mean, the way that we've pivoted with the resources, now Karen's group has been a huge help for that. If we didn't have a book, Karen grabbed it for you. It's been huge. So we have our sources that help us, but we really were pretty seamless. So I mentioned my team of 3. I mean, we haven't been together as a group in the office since March 13th, and I don't think we will. I mean, let's see when we all get vaccinated. None of us have yet, just haven't been able to get it yet. So, I think we'll see what happens there. But I think, again, in just my reading of the news sources, some firms have said they will require vaccines, but then I think there is a debate on, well, how can you really do that? And then of course, this is the biggest, I believe the biggest expense for probably any company outside of salaries is your real estate. So, hey, we all just pivoted. The firm hasn't crashed. Like ooh, and here comes thunder now in Southwest Minneapolis. Here we go. We've shown that we can do this. We're doing really well. I think it does come with stressors that are just harder, for me. I mean, I do miss collaborating and being together. It's not the same on Zoom. But are we getting the work done? Yeah, we are. And I would be really surprised if any of our firm companies were not thinking about like permanently reducing. I have no inside track at Robbins, but I just would think they've got to be thinking about that just from a cost perspective. Maybe hoteling, that's a phrase I've heard a lot. We don't have an open plan like Fish does, so that would take some more, at least in Minneapolis. Again, we have other offices. So that would take some work, but I wouldn't be surprised. We just don't have stacks like Karen's is it's a different structure, and she has people coming in from the public. I mean, they need a physical presence, they have to. But I think we used to think we did, and the last year just happened and we're doing great. So TBD. I think these are here to stay. Yeah. I would love to, my dream scenario would be to maybe we could have the team together like twice a week. Do we need to go 8 to 5 Monday through Friday? I don't think we do.
Okay. I did get a couple of
Really
questions
mean.
in the Q&A for you, Molly.
Oh, for me. Okay.
Yeah, for
great.
you. The
I'm
first
ready.
one is that you said when we didn't have a book and then you trailed off.
Oh, Karen, HCLL helps with that. So
Okay.
for example, if I think it didn't hit me until maybe like July last year, I want to say, where I was really like, oh, we're not going back. So we just kind of put everything on pause in March as far as like getting book shipments, because we do still have some print that we don't have digitally. And so Karen's group was an amazing resource for us. If, an attorney just needed a section from a Lexis treatise, we call them in the legal world, Karen's group could get that for us. And they help us all the time.
Great. The other question is, how much tech teaching are you doing?
A lot. Good question. Yes, that is, I should have said that's another big part of my job is I'm kind of the trainer. We do that collaboratively too, but I do like the new employee orientations. Of course, we have dedicated Westlaw and Lexis representatives. So they will take some of that training, burn it off me. They also, I think always, Theresa, don't they always have JDs? So they can really get, well, maybe not always, but generally they do. And they can get in the weeds.
They aim for that, because like the last two that I've worked with, they definitely have been to law school before.
Yeah. And it helps. It helps if they have, specific, I mean, I obviously have a lot of law knowledge, but I did not go to law school. So sometimes they can really dig in on that to an extent that I can't. So I do get help. But, like general tech issues, actually people have found, I haven't noticed a big, no, I'm not in the IT department. Okay. So we'd ask them. But for us,
I was just going to say our IT department has not been unbusy for a year.
They're doing the Lord's work. It's been, I think, very stressful for them. But a lot of my tech stuff is just like, hey, I can't get this password, or we've had to, one thing I've had to do this year is we have a bunch of resources that are IP authenticated. So great when you're in the office, but not when you're at home. So I've had to just, move everybody over. And then it's like, just always a balance of, do you want to barrage everybody with an email, or do you want to wait till they ask you? Because they won't all read it. So that's a big part of my job too, is not inundating them, but trying to just send information, to like an all-in attorney type thing, which for us is like 220 people. So trying to choose when is a good time to message them and when isn't. Like I said, every day is a new day, and we're doing the best we can, which I think has been pretty good.
Yeah.
I'll just end with saying, I really think one thing I've tried to think about, I have thought about a lot, and with my team too, and is to really I've really been working hard to give us all a grace. I think we're not talking enough about how stressful this has been. And it's been really hard. We are living through a global pandemic. It's scary. Minneapolis has started the Chauvin trial, and it's been a horrible time for what our city is going through. And it's really hard sometimes to just like go back to work and just work. So I've been trying to think of that as I, deal with every, you can, as an empathetic person, you can kind of sense anxiety. I feel it myself, and you can sense it too, even from some of our difficult attorneys. I try to remember that for them too, is they're stressed. I mean, they're high stress to begin with. And then we've just jumped into this. So, I try to go with that approach into training them, and usually it works out pretty well. Ask me on another day and I'll be just a ball of anxiety, but today I feel okay.
Excellent. And Sally, who asked both of those questions, said thank you in the Q&A.
You're welcome, Sally. Thank you.
Theresa, give us your perspective on the pandemic.
Our firm is everywhere. So like we have an office, but when I say we're all over the world, we have an office in Munich and we have an office in, I can't say exactly where in China because I don't remember off the top of my head, but we're in China somewhere. And then we have offices all over the United States. So our firm has always been kind of connected by a technology umbilical cord. So when they made the decision to change how we office, I guess, that transition happened pretty much overnight and almost without any hiccups, because our IT department is awesome and I'm not biased at all. No, our IT department did a lot of legwork. Because our office was already kind of this open concept thing, where like everybody's on a laptop anyway, because if you needed to go to a meeting space, you could just unplug your laptop, take it with you, and your computer can walk with you even within the office. So it just became a matter of take your computer home with you and plug it in there. And then all the computers are already set up to automatically connect through the company VPN. And so, yeah, I mean, like basically I turn on my computer and it's just like I turned it on in the office, except there's no commute, except for like walking down the hallway. So the pandemic, like from my perspective, there's been a lot of pandemic outside and a lot of pandemic on the news. But for me, it's meant that like I get to go to work in my slippers or, wake up 15 minutes before I need to sign on or something. Like if that's what I need for that morning, I've since checked that behavior because that actually stresses me out. I found out more than like having it. I still need a regular wake up schedule, and there's still things I like to get done before I sign in the morning. But I mean, after a while, my 1-bedroom apartment got a little small because I was there all the time. So I've moved during the pandemic. So this is my new condo behind me. There you go. Because I was just getting stir crazy from being by myself in a small space that was essentially like, if you wanted to go to a different room, here's the bathroom. So yeah, it's just, that's me in the pandemic. As far as the organization, they've been handling it really well. They've gotten into kind of this, what is it? A habit, that's the word I'm looking for. They've gotten into a habit of sending out kind of a weekly newsletter of like, hey, this is what's been going on this week. It's not all necessarily pandemic related or civil unrest related, though that does come up just because like it's something that comes up and something that affects our firm. And so, but it's just kind of a check-in and keeping us all in kind of keeping the morale high. My boss has done little things like we have like monthly, bi-monthly, like little video happy hours and things like that, where we just kind of try and relax and socialize, since that's the part we miss out on. We collaborate pretty well online, where we're chatting back and forth, or using our request system, or using email. And so we're getting the work done, but all the stuff that's, work adjacent, that we don't get to do because we're not in the office, we kind of have to schedule that, and we're learning how much time we need to schedule for that. Looking forward, I think our leadership has said something about summertime. They might consider going back to the office. They have definitely taken a hard stance on they will not be requiring vaccination, because how but they won't be requiring that. And then I'm not sure if it's going to change what our firm looks like going forward. I do know that real estate costs are something that law firms are always looking at cutting. And so but it also goes directly against kind of the firm's commitment to collaboration and being kind of this is why they went in for this open office workspace, and why I share a room with 300 people. I'm literally not joking. Like, it's desks as far as the eye can see. But that's just there to encourage collaboration. And when you have everybody working from home, it goes against that culture that they wanted to foster. So I really think that if we do go back to the office, it probably will not be required like 5 days a week. But at the same time, I think it's something that they would heavily encourage. And especially, I have the feeling, especially my department, that my boss is going to heavily encourage it as well. So.
Great. We did get a couple of questions for you in the Q&A. One is, who writes that newsletter that you're getting?
That is actually our managing partner. He actually takes the time to just give us an update on things, which I was so surprised. I was just like, who is this guy? I just kept seeing his name. I thought it was somebody in the business development department, doing internal communication. And it's just like, nope, this is the guy. This is the guy who is in the meetings making the decisions, and he's telling us how it is. So, yeah.
Great. And then also, how is it to move during COVID?
It was quick. Finding a house that you can put an offer on and having the offer get accepted is very hard. That was very challenging, since I think this was the fourth house I put an offer on. But then all the planning and stuff like that, like, hey, I could take my lunch hour and pack a box of books, or, put some clothes in a box or something like that. It actually went quite a bit more smoothly. Again, I was already not having that break for my brain to just like, you don't have to do anything right now, because I was either at work or at home packing. It made it a little bit crazy, because I'm a list person, and so moving was automatically like 8 different lists to start of all the things I needed to pack, and all the things I needed to do, and all the addresses I needed to change, and all the people who needed to get paid, and all that to say, it was a lot. And I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to be settled. I still kind of feel like I'm at an extended stay Airbnb sometimes, because it's just, I keep expecting to go back to my own house, except this is where all my stuff is now. So there you go.
And then lastly, do you anticipate that your work, the world of your work in the office will change if you go back, if there will be any major changes after the pandemic?
Like physically or culturally?
I think anything that you think.
I think there's gonna be a time of adjustment. Like I said, I'm pretty sure my firm's gonna be more in favor of going back, or encouraging the office interaction and things like that. So I can see there just being a readjustment from people kind of keeping their own schedule at home, and kind of doing their thing, still getting their work done. Everybody's still getting their work done. but now you have to spend that extra time to get into the office and do it at work. So there'll be a little bit of that kind of adjustment. Physically, I know that they're going to have to do something. I don't feel like flu season was ever a big issue before, as far as like disease spreading in a huge room and stuff like that. But I do know, like, if somebody in accounting over there had a cold, it eventually made its way over to the library department. So I can see them maybe putting up a little bit more like temporary physical barriers for things like that, or even limiting who or how many people can be in the office on any given day. But I'm literally the lowest person on the totem pole, and so I can make up all sorts of things because I have an awesome imagination, but who knows? Who knows?
Great. Thanks so much, Theresa. Karen, tell us about your world in the pandemic.
Well, it's similar in some ways. We all went home, we didn't all have laptops. We had desktops. It was cheaper for our department to have desktops. So we naively went home and sort of made do with what we had in our home offices. And then after a couple months, it became apparent that this was going to go on for a while. So that I got laptops for everyone on staff. And those have worked pretty well. Publishers were super understanding. PLI stopped shipping until we asked them to start. That also happened with Bloomberg Law books. They held up on shipping a lot of their stuff. The big vendors, Westlaw and Lexis, were understanding about late payments on bills, because like we couldn't physically get in to verify that we had received what they said, and the county won't pay unless we confirm that we got the thing we're paying for. I'm sure it was the same for everyone. So that was good. Westlaw and Lexis offered and actually still have ongoing these kind of temporary special passwords. So if you go onto our county law library website and register, you can get a certain number of hours of free searching, and you will search our databases on those services. And it's like, I can't remember, 30 hours over 40 days or something like that. And then it expires. But, I never thought I'd see the day where those big vendors were going to allow that kind of thing. So clearly it was a pandemic. So I felt like, and this is just my own ballpark figure, it's like we could provide maybe between 80 and 90% of our services. So attorneys know how to contact us, firm librarians know how to contact us, other librarians know how to contact us, and we can do 80 to 90% of our work online. There were some physical things we didn't have, but most of the things we did. But the attorneys and the county employees and the other librarians, they're like 80% of our clientele. And the rest are those folks that I described before who come to the government center, to the probate court, or to DMV, or to small claims court, and they find their way up to the law library because they have a question so that they can access, the full services. But we couldn't find them anymore. They weren't going to the government center for those services, and I didn't know how to reach them, and I still don't. So that's something as a public library you think about. Those are the most vulnerable people. I think the ones who most need our help in accessing justice in a meaningful way. And it's really hard for us to reach them. So one thing I did last summer, we have a close working relationship with Hennepin County Public Library, and they have a little outreach program called the Library Bike. So it's a bike trailer that they hook onto a bicycle and they take it out to events. And they were taking the library event to Holy Trinity Lutheran Church in the East Lake Library parking lot, where they were doing food giveaways over the summer. And that was part of along Lake Street that was damaged. And they showed up there, and they showed up at Powderhorn Park where the city was doing a food giveaway. And I showed up at another park where there was an encampment. And so I started going out with the library bike, and I would bring along material about free legal information and how to access the law library. I am almost 100% sure no one ever contacted us from any of those sessions, but they knew that we were there. And I did help one guy figure something out about absentee voting, and I helped a few people out, like out in the wild. But so that was one thing that we did to try to reach that population. The other thing we did is the court has been doing a lot of Zoom hearings, but not everyone understands Zoom technology or has access to a smartphone or some kind of a device. So their hearing office where you can go and argue your ticket, they were doing a lot of Zoom hearings, and we partnered with them and we said, so our library is closed, but we have a conference room and we'll set up an iPad there and we'll show people how to get on, and they can have their Zoom hearing in the law library conference room. So it was a great partnership. The court provided us with an iPad and a locking device, and they send us the schedule. We only do it for people who are pre-scheduled for a law library Zoom hearing. And we were doing, I'd say 15 to 20 of those a week before we got moved because of the trial. So now we've been in this space. This is our second week, and we average 1 or 2 scheduled a day, and we have a lot of no-shows. So I think people are reluctant to come downtown right now. And also we're in this random building. I mean, when we were in the government center, people knew how to get there, but so we'll see. I mean, it is another way. I don't think those are the exact people who would have come to the law library, but they kind of represent that like swath of society who are the folks who tend to get left behind like all the time. And so they're non-English speakers, or they have low educational attainment, or they're just poor, or a combination of all of that. And so we really do have, as part of our mission, to help people access the courts. And those are a couple of ways that we've tried. If y'all are creative and have other ideas for me, I'm open to it. As the weather warms up, we'll get outside again, and we'll be outside of our walls. And as vaccinations happen and it's safer to be out at events, we'll do more of that. But I have a real concern about people being able to access court. And so that's it. In a more practical sense, finally, a couple of publishers one publisher, Wolters Kluwer, has talked to us about putting some of their titles online and allowing people outside of the building to access them. These publishers, legal publishers, keep coming to me and saying, you can get our titles online. And we go all the way down the road, and then they always pull it out at the end that, but it can only be people who are in your building. And I'll always say, do you understand the concept of a public library? If people have to come into the building to use it online, they'll just use it in print. What's the advantage? So, but this time my Wolters Kluwer rep called and said, because of the pandemic, the company will allow people who are offsite to access your online titles. And that's a publisher that has a lot of corporate titles on corporate law and titles on construction law. We have a robust construction law section. So those are online now, and I'm trying to promote people using those. So.
And I got a question for you in the comments saying, where are you now? What building are you in, this random building?
Yes, I don't want to insult the county by calling one of their buildings random. It's the Health Services Building. It's 2 blocks due east of the government center near the US Bank Stadium. On this small block is also the Juvenile Detention Center, and I think the medical examiner's office is still here. We're across the street from Hennepin County Medical Center, and I was literally being chased around the office by this guy who was vacuuming. I don't know this new building very well. And after all that, I don't think he vacuumed by my desk, but anyhow. Yeah, so we're in this building. The building is open. There's some public health entity in here, and so the public can get in. And so this works for us well, because then our Zoom folks can get in. More and more buildings, my law firm colleagues can speak to this. You used to be able to go into those office buildings and go to different floors, but the security is much tighter in getting into buildings at all, and then getting into a law firm. And we see that in public buildings as well. So we're happy to be here in a place where people can come for their hearings.
And just a quick weather update here in my neck of the woods, which is Eastern Ramsey County, Eastern St. Paul. It is hailing.
Oh gosh.
Giant, I would say probably those large quarter gumball sized hail, huge pieces of hail, biggest ones I've seen in a while. So
we need a new roof at my house in South Minneapolis. So fingers crossed it hit there.
I have no idea what's going on. This weather is just crazy. We have tornadoes in Apple Valley and hail here and who knows.
Minnesota.
Minnesota. So let's do, I apparently skipped one of my favorite questions, and which is, what is the best thing about your job and what is the worst thing about your job? And Theresa, I don't think I've let you go first for a while, so I'm gonna let you do this one first.
These ladies have way more experience than me. They have more stories to tell, I'm sure. No, best thing and worst thing. So best thing is always the treasure hunt. Like that is always that's kind of what drew me into the whole like law librarianship or librarianship in general. And why I prefer being a researcher to being a manager, for instance, or, you know, being in a different role, because I like the treasure hunt. Somebody gives you an X and you have to go find it. Another great thing is helping people be able to find the X as well. So like training and helping people learn how to find the little things that they didn't even know existed. It's super fun just to watch the light bulbs go off. And so that's it's two sides of kind of the same thing, where it's just like, I love finding things, solving problems, and helping people learn how to solve them as well. So that's the great part. The worst part, how is there a worst thing?
How about something you're really in love with?
Something I'm not super in love with. Stressful deadlines. I mean, that's I think I can remember even being like in, you know, high school and not really liking stressful deadlines on things. It's just like, it'll get done. But having somebody email you and like, hey, I have this phone call in 10 minutes. Can you find this? That happened today, by the way. It wasn't the first time. So like I've learned to roll with them. I mean, shoot, I lived through law school. I mean, like, I think I'm still here, right? So like stress in general isn't a big deal, but like like even on my team, there's some days where like it's going to get to this person today, and so we just kind of have to talk them away from the edge a little bit, as far as like, it's okay, it's going to get done, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's still it's one of those things that it's definitely something that's very easy to pick up from the attorneys, that if they're stressed, we're stressed. It's just going to be kind of a ball of stress until it all just gets done. But after a while, we just help each other with that aspect of it too. So that's the most challenging part. It's not the worst part, but it's the most challenging part.
Thank you so much. Karen.
Well, I mean, I would say I've kind of gone full circle in my career, and you know, I'm in a public law library, and I started out in public libraries, and I just love that idea that libraries are a democratic institution, and that all people are welcome without judgment, and that information is power. Like all the tropes, I buy into them 100%. And what I like as a manager is having a really strong staff and helping them have the tools to like strut their stuff, because they're really good. And I really enjoy watching them work, because they're great. They can find all kinds of things. They've seen so much. They know the collection so deeply that it's just really a pleasure to watch people do what they do really well. And I really love that. I think it's great. And I just think it's really important, like for us as a civil society, to have people have access to the law and to encourage people to think for themselves and to really understand, you know, what's going on. So it feels like a contribution to society, and and to support people doing good work, like the lawyers and the judges who are working in the court system, to, help support their ability to do the best job they can. I just think is a satisfying work.
Agreed. And it's absolutely a contribution to society, an important one.
Yep.
And what's the downside?
I think the downside that you see particularly acutely in a public setting is the level of need in our society that isn't being addressed. We help people a lot with finding legal information, and a lot of times what they really need is a lawyer, and they can't afford a lawyer, and they don't qualify for various programs. Legal aid can only help a certain number of people. And so again, you get kind of the least of these in our society who are maybe the least equipped to go it alone in court, who are routinely going it alone in court. And it isn't that the judges or the system has anything personal against these folks, but they just get hammered all the time in the system. And you see it when you see them coming in into our law library, just trying to pay off another fine and clear their record and get their driver's license back so they can go drive trucks some more. And it's sad to see. So I do find that challenging. Yep.
I believe it. And Molly?
Yeah, the favorite thing, was that the question? The favorite thing
Yes.
about?
Best
Okay.
and worst.
Oh yeah, best. Okay. I would have to say our team, our research team, the four of us. It's just, I've talked a little bit about not knowing what I wanted to do, not really, kind of adrift in my 20s, and so finding a group of like-minded people has been really special for me. And then, we really collaborate. We have each other's backs. I think it's so fun we can all approach the same question totally differently. And then we talk about, how we came to the same results. We really support each other. I think to the negative, it can be really stressful in law firms in general. Mine is no exception. I think that's just a hard thing about, especially litigation, probably, is just the attorneys are under a lot of stress. And so I think that makes the best part even more best for me, because we are such a good group together. And I feel really lucky for that. I mean, we probably all had some teams that we like more than others in our careers, and not every team is the same. Not every boss is the same. Not every environment you work in. And it really, it's not really a trope. I mean, I think it's so true that who you are with day to day is really what makes the difference. Those are the people you talk to every day, and so I think that's really special, and I feel really appreciative of the people that work with me. And then so the negative that I said is it really can bring a lot of stress. And I think to Karen's point too, I mean, we see less of this because we work in a law firm, but you think about the injustice and inequality, and I think it's really hard. I mean, we have all these amazing resources available to us, but then you think about someone who's coming in as a pro bono, which means without representation. How are they supposed to go up against, someone at my firm or whoever, right? Or someone that went to Harvard Law School. I mean, so you think about things, especially when law is supposed to be the great equalizer, and that can be hard, along with the stress. Stress is at every job, but like I said, litigation is its own special thing, and it's just a hard. I think the highs are high, right? But the lows can be low. And so we feel that too, even though we're pretty insulated and again, such a strong unit, but you feel it, and that can be stressful.
Thank you. We only have a few minutes left, and I had a final question prepared, but then Sally just asked one in the Q&A, which I like hers better, so we're going to go with hers. And her question is, are your law firms anything like TV law shows? And I'm going to add to that also, what is your favorite TV law show? And Molly, I've got you up on my screen, so I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I love it, Sally. Yeah, I guess I'd be curious, Sally, what TV shows you have in mind. I've watched a lot. Can we count Law and Order SVU? Can I count that?
It's your show, Molly. If you want to count it, I say yes.
I'm choosing that as my favorite show. I'm not comparing my firm to that at all. Like, because we're just like, white collar business stuff, right? Yeah, that's probably my favorite show, just the Law and Orders over the years. But we've been watching the current SVU now. They've been putting some episodes on, shooting it in COVID. No, I mean, I'm thinking of like, I used to watch Boston Legal, remember like Denny Crane? I mean, no, our firm is not like that. Ally McBeal, no, we don't know. There's not the sex appeal, whatever. It's not. No, I mean, I would say it's probably like a lot of, well, I've had other corporate jobs, and I mean, it's similar. It's highly educated. Like Theresa said, these are very smart. Not only smart, but they are very well educated. They're very well read, and they're laser focused on their work. So that is challenging, but it's also really you push yourself a lot, and I think that's really cool. No, I don't know. Theresa and Karen, what do you think? Mine, no, I don't think mine is like on TV.
Theresa, go ahead.
I don't think well, first of all, after law school, I stopped watching a lot of legal programs because they get it wrong. They just do. What's really funny is the one that I found the most accurate was My Cousin Vinny. They got civil procedure correct, the whole thing, and like a judge being being very particular about the dress code, and they're like, yes, that is accurate. That is not accurate to the firm that I work in because we don't do criminal proceedings like that. That's been the most accurate. My favorite has been Suits, but that's probably because I started watching that like right as I was coming out of law school. And so like Mike Ross, that was me. Like, not, I have the credentials and everything like that, and he did not, but like feeling like you're a small fish in a very, very large pond with some very, very big sharks is a feeling that I had often. But as far as the actual law firm culture, it's hard to say. Because I've worked at a very small, like I would call it a mid-sized firm with Maslin, and you have people who never come out of their office while they're at work, and then you have the people who like this is their family, and so they'll stop by your office with their cup of coffee, and like that's their routine that they do every day. And then Gray Plant was a little bit larger. It tried to maintain that bigger culture, but I feel like there was a divide between kind of the administrative staff versus the attorneys, unless you were a secretary, because the secretaries are like right hand to whatever attorneys that they're working for. And so it was very hard to get to know kind of the culture there for me personally. And then at Fish, it's, first of all, it's a different kind of law firm in general because they're very tech forward, just because of the kind of work that we do and the kind of attorneys that run it. But then they still kind of want to keep that family feeling, and they succeed. Just like in the little details, like having the managing partner write a weekly newsletter just to say like, hey, what's up? Or like, this is what's going on in the world of our firm this week. I mean, like I interact with a lot of the attorneys who make requests and things like that. So family, I wouldn't use that word, but people that are encouraging and want things to be successful, definitely yes. So that's why I say it's not Suits. Like I've met attorneys who are very much like Louis Litt, who are competitive for no reason whatsoever. But at the same time, it's like every firm has a little bit of a different culture. Just like every department you're going to work in has a little bit of a different culture. And so getting it right on screen, it's I haven't seen it yet. They take the stereotype of lawyers and they just kind of run with it. So there you go.
I will say Suits is absolutely my favorite legal drama. And if you're listening, go ahead and hit up the chat and tell us your favorite legal drama so we can see. And Karen, tell us yours.
I hate to confess it, but I don't watch them. I don't know that I've ever seen any of them. So I'm going to do something, and Theresa, as the attorney, can object. Objection, Your Honor. Answer non-responsive to the question asked. So I'll just answer a question you didn't ask. And that is, I mean, I guess I don't know who's watching this, but if you're thinking about like changing positions, or if you're a new librarian, I just wanted to say, by the time you've been around as long as I have, you end up being asked to write letters of recommendation. And I think it's really fun. And so, and as I established earlier, I've gone for a lot of different jobs. So I've had to ask for this a lot. I've applied for grants. I've done all of that. And for a long time, I felt a little bit sheepish about it, but I'm here to tell you, as a person who writes them now, that it's really fun. And so I've now written, letters for people applying to law school and library school, and the character and fitness portion of the bar exam. And I just wrote one for someone who's applying for a judgeship. And it's fun. It gives you a chance to remember how many cool people are in this field, and you just want them to succeed. So I just wanted to end on a happier note. I was all down about the justice system in my last question, and I just wanted to encourage folks to go for what you want to go for, and no doubt there is someone in your corner who's rooting for you, and they'll be happy to write a letter for you.
See, now that is a beautiful way to end it, Karen. Thank you so much. And we are literally, it's just 6 o'clock right now. So I just wanted to say thank you so much to all of our panelists. You guys were fantastic. I honestly don't know that I've laughed this much in the other panels that we've done. So what I've learned today is law librarians are super fun. You guys are great.
Law libraries are laugh a minute, right?
Apparently so. You guys have had me.
We keep on praying, right?
So thank you so much. If you in the audience have any further questions, feel free to reach out to me and I can get you answers. And to my panelists, once again, thank you so much for being here, for giving of your time.
Thank you.
We really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. A lot of fun.
Yes.
Yep.
Everything
care.
is great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.